Welcome back to Two Pretty Good Bad Men, an Alias Smith & Jones podcast. I'm your darling Clementine. Your darling Tabitha. And today we are covering Season 2, Episode 10, Dreadful Sorry Clementine. This episode was shot at the end of September through the beginning of October in 1971, and it aired November 18th, 1971. The story was by Roy Huggins. The teleplay was by Glenn A. Larson. Hey, look who's back! Glenn! Well, the teleplay was initially by a writer named Buck Houghton, but Huggins wasn't happy with it, so we gave it to Larson. And it was directed by Barry Shear, who actually just directed the last episode. Busy little bee. This episode is most notable for guest starring Sally Field as Clementine Hale. Yes, that's Sally Field. I don't think I need to tell you who Sally Field is, do I? Multiple Academy Award winner, multiple Emmy Award winner, still working today. I grew up watching her in Forrest Gump, Mrs. Doubtfire, and, of course, Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. I remember years later when I saw Smokey and the Bandit and was like, whoa, Sally Field was hot. Who knew? I won't get into all her credits here. That would take forever. I will say that she got her start on the series Gidget, and that's where she met Pete Duell. He played Gidget's uptight, neurotic brother-in-law, John. I have seen the entire series, and while it only made me laugh a couple of times, I found it to be a very sweet and enjoyable show. In the behind-the-scenes special features for the Gidget DVD set, which Sally Field was cool enough to participate in, she had this to say about Pete. Quote, I loved Pete. I loved him, loved him, loved him, loved him. Pete just was Pete. Bless him, and goddamn him, because he isn't alive, and he, killed himself. I'm sure I'm not the only one in the world that wished he hadn't done that. He was a tremendously gifted actor. I never knew how troubled he was because he always treated me, I think, like a big brother would, which I hated him for it. I'm not your sister. Don't treat me like a girl. But I was Gidget, I think, to him. End quote. Though I have read some old tabloids that suggest the two briefly dated, but maybe it was very casual, or maybe they were always just friends and, tabloids are gonna tabloid. I just thought it was worth pointing out. One quote from Movie and TV Screen, April 1967, said, quote, they're in love, but in a completely different way. Peter, who really prefers older women, met young Sally and flipped, but made it clear that theirs is strictly a for now kind of romance, end quote. Yeah, I kind of doubt that's totally accurate. Here's another quote from the book Sally Field, a Biography by Jason Bondaroff. Quote, Pete Duell, who was 27, marveled at Sally's maturity. She's the first young woman I've ever known who acts her age, he announced. Most 21-year-olds try and act like they're 35, which makes them dismal flops as far as I'm concerned. Sally's a very refreshing change. End quote. So yeah, who knows what really went on, if anything. I guess only Sally would at this point. But it's clear that they cared about each other, and it's fun to see them play a different dynamic in this episode than what they had on Gidget, where her character tolerated his at best. Oh, and by the way, she hated the Flying Nun. Just fun fact. We also have Don Amici as Diamond Jim. He was also a voice in Homeward Bound, so that makes that movie a mini ASJ reunion. This and House of a Thousand Corpses. Hell of a double feature. Amici had a very long, varied career. He worked in the 80s and the 90s on things like Karina, Trading Places, and Cocoon. But he also worked in the golden age of Hollywood. I saw him in a pretty crappy movie called Old Chicago, about the family who owned the cow that supposedly started the Great Chicago Fire. It was nominated for Best Picture for reasons I'm sure I don't understand. But he also worked on films like Heaven Can Wait, Moon Over Miami, The Story of Alexander Graham Bell, The Three Musketeers, and some Carmen Miranda movies like Down Argentine Way and That Night in Rio. He passed away in 1993 from prostate cancer. Next up is Rudy Vallee as Winfred Fletcher. Vallee was a saxophone player and band leader in his early career. He had a hit radio show called The Fleischmann's Yeast Hour. Apparently everybody hated him because he was mean to his staff and instigated fistfights with people who got on his nerves. Sounds like a very pleasant guy. He got into movies in the 30s and 40s with titles like Too Many Blondes. Is there such a thing, though? Later, when he was working on TV, he guest starred on Death Valley Days, Batman, Petticoat Junction, and Chips. You can find his music on a lot of soundtracks, though, mostly the songs Deep Night and Goodnight Sweetheart. He passed away in 1986 at the age of 84. As Crawford, we have Jackie Coogan. Jackie Coogan was a performer from birth, basically. He played the Kid in Charlie Chaplin's brilliantly titled The Kid. He also played Oliver Twist in a 1922 version. He had a rough go of it after he grew up. His career hit a slump, and his mother and stepfather would not give him the money that he earned as a child star. What a couple of assholes. He did make a comeback in television. He played Uncle Fester on the Addams Family TV series. He worked on The Partridge Family, Julia, Family Affair, and The Wild Wild West. He passed away in 1984 at age 69. He will appear in 2 more ASJ episodes before the series ends. And finally, we have Keenan Wynn as Horace Wingate, but I've already talked about his career back in Stagecoach 7. He will also appear in 1 more ASJ episode next season. Now, this episode was basically a spiritual sequel to an episode of Maverick called Shady Deal at Sunny Acres. That episode is touted by many as being one of the best. James Garner certainly liked it, but perhaps it's because he just got to kind of sit and whittle the whole episode. And don't get me wrong, I watched it. It is a fun episode. It's like the Avengers of Maverick. All the guest characters come together, the recurring characters, you know? But how does it stack up against this episode? Let's find out. We open on a sneak peek, so that's strike 1. Kid rides up to a man named Mr. Wingate who pulls a gun on him. Kid tells him he's making a mistake. Wingate says, no, you're making the mistake by coming back here. And credits. Sally Field gets the special guest star credit, obviously. I mean, come on. The boys stop by the front desk of their hotel. They chat with the clerk and say they like the town and are thinking of sticking around indefinitely. Right up until he mentions that someone was in there earlier looking for the 2 of them. Then they want to check out, like, immediately. They pay their $6 bill. Seriously, if that's all the hotel room costs, where the hell does their money go? Anyway, they slip out the back. Clementine enters the scene and catches the boys just as they arrive at the livery stable. She runs toward them, and they are thrilled to see her. They each scoop her up and kiss her. Like, there's a lot of kissing and holding. She's so lucky. Clem says they've all known each other since they were almost kids, and it's no coincidence that she found them there. She needs them to help her steal $50,000. Well, they start to walk away, and she follows them. They're refusing to help her, but she does have an ace up her sleeve. She's got a picture of them. You see, no other pictures of the boys exist. If they don't help her, she'll hand it over to the authorities. Okay, well, we're not off to a great start with her character here. I like the picture, though. The boys are sitting in the foreground with Clem standing behind them. I wonder what the occasion was. That night, Hayes sneaks down to the hotel safe to try and retrieve the incriminating photo. The clerk is asleep, so he's got to be real quiet. But then a drunk customer comes in and wants the key to his room. Apparently he fell out the window. Dude, maybe it's time to call it a night. Hayes successfully opens the safe and takes back the photograph. He's almost back to his room when the drunk guy stumbles back downstairs. Hayes just does his best and runs right past him. The clerk wakes up and throws the guy out into the street. So was it really his room or no? The next day, Hayes, Kid, and Clem are riding the stage, and she's telling them about a crooked man named Fletcher who deserves to lose his $50,000. They say that doesn't sound like the kind of person Clem would mix up with. She says that she only knows him through her father, who used to work for him. But her father's an ex-con, so he can't turn him into the cops. They'll just think he's the one responsible. But she wants revenge. Of course, they're like, we can't get involved in something like that. I don't know why they can't just tell her about the deal if she's so close to them, but whatever. They're dropping her off at Silver Springs, and then they're going on to Clarksville. They have to take the last train there. That was a Monkees reference. They reveal to her that they have the photo, and then they burn it in front of her. And Clem is like, well, I guess now there's no pictures of you, except for the one I have in a safe deposit box in Denver. So that leaves them pretty well stuck. They all arrive together in the town of Silver Springs. She points out Fletcher in the street and is basically like, well, go get him. Girl, you want them to just go out on the street and attack him? That's not going to work. They need time and a plan. She says she's on a time limit, but she won't tell them why. Hayes says that basically they need him to want to get his hands on that amount of cash so they can get their hands on it. And they call on a friend named Diamond Jim. I'm guessing that Sam Jaffe and Walter Brennan were both unavailable this particular week to reprise their characters as Soapy and Silky. Because how do our boys have 3 filthy rich friends? I mean, I know they're all former con men, but come on. The next scene, we're on a dilapidated riverboat with Fletcher trying to sell the thing to Hayes, aka Mr. Smith. He, quote, buys it, and tells Fletcher he's also looking to buy up some land. Fletcher gives him a ride back to town, and Hayes conveniently leaves some papers in the buggy. Back at the hotel room, Kid and Clem are watching the scene play out. Clem is very anxious, and she and the kids start making out for a bit until Hayes interrupts them. And he's not mad or anything, though. And okay, I'm sorry, but they were definitely in a throuple at some point, right? Or at least she's been with both of them. Plus, they're all sharing this hotel room. Come on now. They see Fletcher enter the hotel. The three hide in the closet after leaving the door unlocked. Fletcher comes into the room and just happens upon the letter that Hayes definitely didn't leave out on purpose. Hayes comes out and is like, "Hey, bud, what you doing here?" Fletcher really thinks he can make some money off Hayes or Mr. Smith. When he goes back to the street, Fletcher's like, "Hey, I can help you," playing right into their hands. He and Hayes ride off. Kid and Clem rush down to their buggy and hightail it the other way. Hayes and Fletcher pull up to what looks like a plantation house. Not gonna unpack that. Kid answers the door with this hilarious southern accent. Hayes tells him he'd like to buy his land, and Kid invites them in where his sister, Clem, is waiting. I love that Clem had time to put her hair up into these silly little curly pigtails before Hayes got there. They start their fake negotiations for this land, $3 an acre. Okay, $5 an acre. Kid won't settle for anything less than $8 an acre. Sold! But Southern Sister Clem simply will not sell. She can't do it. Her daddy gave her that land. On the ride back, Fletcher is like, "That land is worth nothing. You're crazy." Hayes says that his clients are taking care of it. He agrees to take Fletcher to the man who gives him the money on the condition he doesn't try and get in on his deal. The man they meet is, of course, Diamond Jim. He acts outraged that Hayes told Fletcher about the land deal, and Hayes says he'll take full responsibility, and Fletcher swears to keep it all a secret. Diamond Jim hands over $20,000 in cash to Hayes. Fletcher is drooling. This scheme is not as fun as the fake diamond field, just pointing that out. At least that one had that silly Easter egg hunt. When Hayes and Fletcher leave, Diamond Jim leaves the office and reveals that it's actually just an office for rent. Back at the hotel, the trio are drinking and celebrating and are definitely gonna have sex. They still don't get why Clem is doing all this, because she's never done anything crooked before. Anyway, before they can get to the naked stuff, there's a knock at the door. Hayes once again pushes Clem and Kid into the closet before letting in Fletcher. Fletcher is thrilled. He says he saved him thousands of dollars because he found a man named Wingate who owns part of the land Hayes is looking for and will sell it to him way cheaper than those weird southern siblings, but Fletcher wants in on the deal now. Well, that puts a damper on their plan. When Fletcher leaves, the boys are basically like, "Oh well, we tried. But that's not good enough for Clem. She is not letting this go." She and Kid show up to Mr. Wingate's place and buy the land before Fletcher and Hayes get there via a check. Wingate is very reluctant to accept a check, which is totally fair, but in their hurry, Clem offers her pearl necklace as collateral until it clears. He accepts the deal and decides they're telling the truth because he's kind enough to let her keep the necklace. Clem's dress is fire, by the way. She looks amazing in this scene. Just as they pull away, Fletcher and Hayes pull up and offer to buy the land, and he's like, "The fuck? No one's ever wanted this land before, and now today everybody wants it." "Well, you can't have it, I just sold it." Too bad the guy sold it for $1 an acre, and Hayes was going to pay him $5 an acre, and now Wingate is pissed. I feel so bad for this guy. He isn't innocent in all this. Leave him alone. While Fletcher and Hayes are riding back, Fletcher shoves Hayes out of the buggy to run off and buy the rest from Clem. No big deal, all part of the plan. Hayes smiles from the dirt, watching him disappear. And we're back at our sneak peek. Wingate wants his deeds back, and Kid obliges. Wingate didn't actually lose anything here. He still has his land, but still, what a confusing and frustrating day for this guy who has nothing to do with anything that's going on. Fletcher goes to his office and retrieves the $50,000. He brings it back to Clem's fake mansion, and she happily sells him her land. Once Fletcher leaves, so does Clem. And I mean, she leaves. She is out of there without the boys. There is a Sally Field-shaped hole in the wall. Back in town, Fletcher rushes back to Diamond Jim's fake office, and the janitor's like, "Ooh, bro, no one's rented this office in 2 months." So naturally, he's thinking ghost. No, I'm kidding. He knows he's been had. The boys wait at the train station for Clem, who is not coming, and they wait until nightfall. It's kind of sad, really. Hayes says that they're going to track her down, not because of the money, of course, but because they don't want her going down a life of crime. They have to save her soul. And just as a byproduct, they'll get their $50,000 back. They end up finding her in Denver. They get to her room and she's like, oh no, you two have to scoot. Of course, they're not going to buy what she's selling at this point, because she's lied to them this entire time. But she promises she's got company that they do not want to meet, a federal marshal and a deputy state attorney general. The boys just laugh at her. Then there's a knock at the door and she tries to get them to hide in the closet. Lots of closets this episode. I'm sure that means something. Anyway, they refuse and she says she warned them and lets in exactly who she said she'd let in. She introduces the guys as Joshua and Thaddeus, her cousins. This was actually all about releasing her father from prison. She raised the $50,000 and in the process proved that Fletcher was crooked and her father was innocent. Her father didn't steal from Fletcher. Fletcher stole from himself. Well, his business. Why the hell couldn't she tell the guys this in the first place? Again, if they're all supposed to be so close, I don't really get it. Huggins said she wouldn't have known the boys have gone straight and didn't think that they would help her without something being in it for them. Okay, she says she last saw them 10 months ago, and there was no way only 10 months have passed from the pilot until this episode. They just spent an entire winter in one episode. And she still could have asked, and then if they said no, then pull out the blackmail picture. It was just pointless of her to lie like this. Anyway, in the tag, the boys escort Clem to the train station, and they still want the picture back. Yeah, that's not going to happen. She makes a show of going through her bag and supposedly giving them the envelope that the picture is in, and then gets on the departing train. Of course, the picture isn't in the envelope, it's just their wanted posters. But she's already gone. The end. Honestly, meh. This one's okay, I guess. I've said that I'm not a big fan of the con episodes, and this is no exception. It's fine. My husband was kind of bored by it. Like I said at the start, it's only notable because it has Sally Field in it, who is of course great. She has wonderful chemistry with Pete, and luckily she has just as good of chemistry with Ben. The three of them worked really well together this episode. Other than that, it's just kind of forgettable to me. I'm not saying it's objectively bad, it's just not my jam. The line of the episode goes to the kid. At the very end, after the marshal and the state's attorney leave, Kid says, "Next time she invites us to a closet, I, for one, am gonna go." Unintentional, I'm sure, but hilarious nonetheless. And the episode goes to the both of them. It's a team effort once again. Maybe I'll give the edge to the kid because of the southern accent. Next time on Alias Smith & Jones, the boys are held hostage at a way station. Again! But this time Ann Archer is there. Research for this podcast comes mainly from the wonderful book Alias Smith & Jones, the story of two pretty good bad men, by Sandra K. Segala and Joanne M. Bagwell. Thanks for listening.